The CDFI Coalition wasn't something that was a long time in planning. There had been a small group of folks who had been meeting to talk about policy work around CDFIs. No one quite knew what a policy agenda would be or what it should be or how to approach it. And then came word in the summer in August of 1992 that Bill Clinton had mentioned his desire to create something that would support community development banks and micro credit organizations. And we started thinking, well, we should be prepared for this. Maybe something comes of this. And we raised a little bit of money. OFN raised a little bit of money. I was working as a consultant to OFN then, and they brought me on as the policy person because I had 3.5 years of Capitol Hill experience. It wasn't a lot. And then lo and behold, Bill Clinton got elected, and we thought, we should be prepared, if nothing else, to defend ourselves if this actually goes forward. Who knows? Presidential candidates make all sorts of promises. You never know which ones they're really going to pursue, which ones, they're serious about, which ones their staff want to get behind and all that. So we reached out to the Clinton staff and, we were ready to meet with them, but we were doing it as the CDFI Coalition, or as we called it, the Ad Hoc Coalition of Community Development Financial Institutions. And the story of how that came to be was kind of interesting because we'd been doing a little bit of policy work, but not serious about it. So we decided the OFN conference that year was the weekend after. It was probably Thursday, Friday, Saturday after the election. So Bill Clinton had just been elected. We decided we would convene a meeting. We picked a date, invited people from across the industry, a lot of whom are still members of the coalition, to come and talk about forming an ad hoc coalition to work together to sort of advance this legislation, if there was legislation to advance. There were probably 8 or 9 of us. We didn't know how many people we wanted there. We didn't know who would be in the coalition. There was this, OFN was a pretty new trade group. The National Federation of Community Development Credit Unions had been around for a while, was more established. There was a AEO, the Association for Enterprise Opportunity, was still brand new, really, and representing micro enterprise. We didn't know who to invite to represent the Native community, so there was a lot of discussion around that. We didn't know whether individual CDFIs should be in there. And so we scheduled a meeting. Someone had contacted with the United Methodist Church, who has a building just across from the Capitol building. And, they have some rooms in the basement that are fairly small. We got in there, it was a little bit tight. And we started having this conversation. And it was, 11 o'clock in the morning or something like that. And then some other people came in. We didn't see them. They came in and took the next room. Well, it turns out that it was a lunch. The speaker was the Reverend Jesse Jackson, who is not known for being a quiet speaker. And so we were having a conversation, figuring out who should be members of the coalition, what we would do, how we would move forward. And from the next room, and there were thin walls there in the basement of the United Methodist building, came the voice of the Reverend Jesse Jackson for at least an hour. And his voice was probably louder in our room than it was in his room. And we were trying to chart the future of the CDFI industry over this loud speaking. So it's always possible we didn't hear each other and we did things differently than we meant to. But we managed to get through that. And it was a moment to remember as a significant time when we took a significant step under a little bit of duress. But what we didn't know was that we were going to turn out to be the key resource on this. The CDFI Coalition became the organization that the White House trusted on this, and so we basically could veto things if we didn't want them in the legislation. And we didn't. It took us a while to figure that out. But what came out of that meeting was the decision to write a policy paper, white paper, really. We started with a 3-page letter that Martin Paul Trimble, who was then director of NACDLF, now OFN, had written to the president of the MacArthur Foundation about this as a fundraising thing. And we started with that, and it was a collaborative effort. I was sort of in charge of bringing everything together, but a lot of people contributed to it. And by the middle of December, we had a sort of a final draft of what became Principles of Community Development Finance and Proposals for Key Federal Support. And it was just in time, as it happened, for a visit that we had scheduled. It didn't come off as scheduled. We had scheduled with the staff at the Clinton Transition Office, who were getting ready for the new administration. And so we went down with copies of this paper and thought it would be useful to talk to someone there. And we were in what they call the bullpen, the waiting area, to see if you can get in to meet. And we sat there for probably 6 or 8 hours. waiting for somebody, and every once in a while somebody would come out. We had a meeting with a Harvard law professor who was working for the Clinton transition team. He wasn't going to be available, clearly. And finally, a young intern at the transition team came out and said, "Sorry, we're not going to be able to meet with you. Do you have something you want to leave behind?" And we gave him a copy of the paper. And what was remarkable about that was we heard nothing more from the transition team. We had no idea whether that ended up in the thrown away or recycled or whatever had happened to it until about a month later, right before the inauguration of President Clinton, when he was doing an interview, a famous interview on MTV. And it's famous because one of the college students who was there asked him, "Do you wear boxers or briefs?" But at that point, I don't remember the question, he started talking about this plan to create this network of things called CDFIs, Community Development Financial Institutions. And he started literally quoting from that paper. He had read it, he remembered it, he was using it. And, just as soon as he said CDFIs, we knew it was from us because nobody else used the term. And that was the moment when we knew, oh, something's going to happen here. Something's really going to happen here.